This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, I'm starting the meeting here. Welcome. Today is August 11th, 2021, and today we are going to be talking about what's happening in the market, as we do every year, every month. So the market is shifting right now, and we're starting to see some real changes. So I'm going to go ahead and get started right away into our slideshow about what's happening nationally and then what is happening locally, and get started here. So nationally, this is really interesting stuff because we are hearing things across the country as the COVID Delta variant is resurging. We believe we're going to be back into mask mandates, the question on what's happening with schools, all that sort of stuff. And then, of course, housing. Housing has been at such a peak for such a long time. Are we still living through a seller's market, or is it starting to shift? And the thing is, when you don't have emotion tends to drive the decision making. So this is one of the things that is so important for us to be aware of when we move forward in our representation of our clients. Are we giving everyone good information? I think it's real important that we understand that, because people want to know what's going on. So this is a chart that shows the year-over-year price appreciation of homes across the country on an average. In January, they were up 10% over January from 2020. February, 10% over February of 2020. Look what happened in May, went up to 15%. And so, yes, the year-over-year price appreciation percentages are accelerating. We're seeing homes worth more and more as things move on. So people are starting to ask, are we in a housing bubble? Are we in a housing bubble? You know, what about risky loans? Are we actually at a point in time where we're starting to think, is this bubble of all the home appreciation and the price is going to burst? So, good question. Things for us to be aware of is that there are marked differences in today's run-up in prices compared to 2005, which was a bubble fueled by risky loans and lenient underwriting. Today, loans with high risk features are absent and mortgage underwriting is prudent. We all remember and I jumped on the bandwagon with everybody else, no-doc loans. It was so easy. Lenders were handing out loans like candy. You walk in, you sign a couple of pieces of paper, there you go, you got a loan. It was so easy to get loans. And they also were selling what they called Texas loan, which were definitely inflated loans, in which people would go in to get their loan for their home that they were purchasing, then they would throw in a HELOC on top of it. So you were getting loans for like 120, 130% of value of the property. That happened all the time, and it was amazing. Today's loans are not like that. We all remember when TRID first hit, and that's the Truth in Lending document. What does D stand for? Truth in Lending Disclosure. Basically, the requirement that people have to have time to review their loan docs to make sure they understand what they're actually purchasing when they buy a loan. The fact that you had to prove that you could afford it through verification of your employment status, all those sort of things. No longer were people just handing out loans the way they were during the run-up to the housing bubble that burst. So in 2006, think about loan originations with your FICO score. In 2006, there were 376 billion loans written in which the FICO score of the recipient was less than 620. In 2020, there were 74 billion in loans written in which the FICO score is less than 620. So that's a big difference. People who are marginal buyers are having a harder time to purchase. And actually, if people are really serious about trying to buy when they have a marginal score, credit score, often lenders will work with them to try to bring up that credit score, pay off that car loan, pay down those credit cards, pay off those credit cards, do whatever you can do so that you get your FICO score up to a point where you actually are at good loan risk. And then hopefully apply those good practices and your wealth management as you move forward in the rest of your life after you get your loan. So these outsized increases have raised concerns that a home price bubble is emerging. However, conditions today are quite different than in the early 2000s, particularly in terms of credit availability. The current climb in house prices instead reflects strong demand amid tight supply, helped along by record low interest rates. So that is actually what's happening right now. We have no inventory, and that's what's pushing prices up. So look at this. This is the historic data for the Mortgage Credit Availability Index, how easy it was in the housing bubble to get credit. It was way up there. Today, it's really low. This is the Mortgage Credit Availability Index. So people who are buying on credit really have a hard time getting homes. And so you really have to prove what's going on. And so, again, you have to show that you actually can afford the home. Makes a big difference. So are we entering into a housing bubble? What's the mortgage, debt, and affordability? Okay, so this is an interesting chart. This is the household debt service ratio for mortgages as a percentage of disposable personal income. Now, disposable personal income is what's left over after your taxes are paid, your FICA taxes, your income taxes, all those sort of taxes. So your disposable income is what's left over. If you look here, this is the debt service ratio. It was really super, super high. People who were in the housing bubble time frame, they were leveraged. I mean, they had debt out the wazoo. I know people who were taking out their HELOCs. Remember I told you about they called them the Texas mortgage, the inflated mortgages to, buy boats, buy trucks. And, they didn't have those stipulations on HELOCs as to what you could do with them. They were financing their kids' college education. They were doing different things other than putting the money from their HELOC back into their house for a remodel or things like that. Today, the household debt service ratio for mortgages is way, way down. It's historically low. Look at what it was back in the 1980s, much higher than it is today. So we are not having people leverage money out of their home for other things. The ratio is good. So, and if we look back at the bubble years, house prices exceeded house buying power in 2006 nationally, but today house buying power is nearly twice as high as the median sales price nationally. Many find it hard to believe, but housing is actually undervalued in a lot of markets, and the gap between house buying power and sale prices indicates there's room for further house price growth in the months to come in certain markets. Now here, the median sales price of a home or asking price is now $666,000. That is, that's the median sales price. That's unheard of. During the housing bubble, the median sales price before the crash happened was under $400,000. So this tells you kind of where we are, but we're finding that the buyers that we have here have far more money. People who are transplants from outside areas, think of the Bay Area, a lot of people who've moved here from wealthier areas, we're still cheap in comparison to where they came from. So it's really an interesting thing that we're dealing with. So this one, this is the chart we keep on going back to, the Housing Affordability Index. The higher the figure, the more affordable the home. So the orange is all during the housing crisis, the bubble burst, where you could pick up a house on acreage, a stunning 4,000 square foot home on acreage for $700,000, and less. When it was valued actual, you think about it in today's prices, that thing would be pushing, $2 million. The housing affordability, houses, even though they come down a little bit from 2020, because housing prices have gone up, we're still way more affordable than they were back in the 1990s. This index has been in existence for a long time. In the 1990s, 2000, mortgage interest rates were super high. I remember my first home that I bought in Bend, I was paying 8% mortgage interest rate. And that was good. That was like at a dip. I got it at a dip. And that was like, yay, I really lucked out. My sister bought a house at one point in time in California, and her interest rate was 15%. Do you guys remember those kind of interest rates? Talk about something that was not affordable. Yeah. And Sherry, thanks for that, Sherry. You paid 7.5% interest rate. These interest rates are still super, super, super low, which adds into the housing affordability, which has to be considered there as one of the reasons. We're less affordable than we were last year, but still historically very affordable. So affordability, however, is decreasing. So in January, this is where we were. February, March, April, May, the affordability is going down. And that's a combination, you know, think about interest rates had gone up, now they're dipping down again, but prices, what's going up with housing prices? I mean, prices are still going up. So affordability continues to decrease. Prices continue to go up because there's still far more demand than there is available supply. So are we in a housing bubble? Absolutely not. So when people ask you that, when COVID first hit, we were getting floor calls from people who were asking, hey, I can't wait until everything crashes again in Bend to buy. You know, it's like, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. Not unless we have some major economic issue that happens across the country, something. It's just not, it's just the data that we look at is just not there to support a bubble burst. It's a supply and demand issue. And the main driver of the housing shortfall has been the long-term decline in the construction of single-family homes. That is absolutely the case. This next chart is really fascinating. This is the number of single-family housing units completed from 1970s. They were building far more homes in the 1970s and 1980s than they have in the last decade. This was the boom leading up to the housing bust. Everyone and their uncle were builders. I remember my husband talking to his plumber who was out building spec houses, which is actually violation of Oregon law. I don't know if people are aware of that. There's going to be a session on that at the Oregon Realtors conference this fall about that. But anyway, this was 4 consecutive years of record-setting units during the build-up to the housing burst, and then everything burst. And people who lived in Bend long enough can remember driving around and seeing abandoned subdivisions, homes half done, you know, and they were there half done for several years until people picked up the subdivision and then finished the homes and did things like that. But what happened after everything burst? There was nothing. No construction going on. Anyone who was a builder could not get a loan. Anyone trying to build couldn't build. Maybe every now and then there would be a custom home being built. The only place here in Bend that still had building going on was Northwest Crossing. And the way that happened, and that was a brilliant move that Mike Tennant and the Brooks Resources combined forces, and they were doing hard money lending. And what they did, they halved the prices of lots. So what a lot that was selling for $160,000, they halved it to $80,000. And then they financed the build job to go on there. And so builders who were part of the Northwest Crossing Guild, you know, they were officially, you had to get into being a guild builder. There were certain obligations. First of all, you had to list the home with Sandy Garner. You had to fulfill certain terms of requirements to be a guild builder, but they financed those builds. You know, hard money lending was the only way that continued on, because banks were not lending on anything. In fact, locally, I know the first banks that actually started lending was Washington Fed. That was one of the local ones that started lending coming out of the recession. It took time for banks to start getting confident, because look what, they had financed all of these things and lost their shirts on them, you know, when it all crashed. So anyway, we are still catching up on the fact we had a bunch of homes that should have been built in the last 10 years that haven't. And that's what's caused this lack of inventory across the country. We just still are trying to get caught up on it. So let's talk next about what about forbearance? Because we all know what happened when COVID first hit. is they put a moratorium on foreclosures and a moratorium on evictions. So let's talk about what's happened with the foreclosures. So the anticipation, this is really fascinating, is when COVID first hit that we're going to have 30% of mortgages in forbearance. Everyone thought that. 30% of mortgages across the country. They thought that would actually happen. In actuality, only 8.47% went into forbearance in May of 2020. And today, the figure is at 3.5%. So there's been nowhere near that kind of projection. And the ones that actually went into forbearance, it's less than half that are still undergoing that. So the number of mortgages in active forbearance is now under 2 million across the country. There's only about 2 million that are actually in forbearance. So this is what actually happened back in May of 2020, and this is where we are now. It's going down and down and down. So this chart is really, really good. This shows of the people who entered into forbearance, and this chart is really, really up to date through July 11th, so just about a month off on what's actually happened. In the green, these are all people who've paid up everything. They were in forbearance, but they got caught up. They're paid in full, so everything is well and good. The blue are people who have worked out a repayment plan with their bank, either through a loan modification or a loan deferral, basically applying the missed payments on the back end of their loan. So instead of a 30-year loan, maybe a 35-year loan or whatever they need to do to make up those extra payments. Actually, only 17.2% are still in trouble. So no loss mitigation plan and so basically that, or maybe a repayment plan, short sale, deed in lieu of foreclosure, things like that. In actuality, it's really interesting that of the loans that are in forbearance, 10% of them, of the ones that are in forbearance right now in this red mark, 87% of these loans have 10% or more equity. So in essence, they could sell their home and not even do a short sale, pay off everybody and still pocket some money. So there's opportunities there. So 87% still have 10% or more equity in their property. And so that means 13% really are underwater. And of those, it's only 200 to 300,000 loans across the country that really are hurting. Now that's terrible for the people who are dealing with that. But in reality, during the housing burst, we had 9.3 million households who went through foreclosure, gave up their home to a lender or sold in a distress sale. 9.3 million, and now we're talking 200 to 300,000. So it's just not the same by any means. We're not at a point of having any major concern that we're going to be having a big rash of distressed homes hit the market. In fact, I was talking with a broker the other day about short sales, and this is a broker who never had dealt with short sales. I mean, that was the gist of our business just 10 years ago. And if you never had dealt with a short sale before, there's a lot of paperwork involved in that. And we would negotiate 6% commissions, and the listing side would keep 3.5% because it was so much work. And you had to get the lenders to approve it, and they did because there was so much work. We would have documents and papers about this thick on every transaction, full of tax records from our clients and correspondence and all that stuff. It was a lot of work, but we know how to do it. Hopefully we will not have to deal with it. Last year we dealt with someone who was missing mortgage payments, but they had so much equity. We sold the home, and even though they started getting notices of default and the bank was starting the process, we sold the house, paid off the bank, and they walked away with about $400,000 in their pockets. So it was a win for them. So the likelihood of us having a foreclosure crisis again is about 0. And that's from Ivy Zellman, who is an expert in real estate. He really knows his stuff. So we are at, when people talk about that, when can I pick up all those distressed prices, this distressed homes in Central Oregon? It's like, well, we can see if we can find anywhere that might be in distress, but the likelihood that we'll find any is pretty remote. So now let's go on to about what is the media saying? The media is actually saying the housing boom is over. Home sales are dropped to new low. Pending home sales drop in June. More evidence of a housing turnaround. Home sales drop in June as prices continue to rise. So, you know, this is what you're starting to hear is everything is crashing again. Our prices are going down. Well, actually, they're not. They are not. This is buyer traffic in April of 2021. The darker the blue, I mean, the dark blue is very, very, very strong traffic. The lighter blue here is strong buyer traffic. Obviously, in April of this year, lots of people trying to buy homes across the country. Here's May. A little more of the strong instead of the very strong. And here's June. A little more of the strong. So, and here in New Hampshire and in Mississippi, it's just considered stable. So it's still, there's still a lot of buyers, but maybe not the desperate buyers. And that's what we're seeing in our local market. We are seeing, yes, sometimes multiple offers, but instead of 5, 6 offers on a listing, we're maybe seeing 2. Instead of you know, buyers giving away the store on everything. I'm definitely seeing buyers say, yeah, we're going to have a home inspection. Yeah, we're transitioning. We are starting to transition. I'm starting to see sellers being willing to accept offers, which they're not waiving the appraisal up to a certain figure. I'm starting to see people I'm actually even seeing counter offers, which is neat. It's really great for buyers to see that, having that opportunity to negotiate some things. So again, this is looking at, again, Q2 buyer traffic, this is April, May, and June. So when you see it all together like this, you're seeing we are shifting. We are starting to change a little bit. You can see Oregon is still very, very strong buyers. Will that change? I think so. I mean, this just goes through June. So what's July, August going to reflect? We are still having buyers out there, but I've heard from a number of people that buyers had gotten discouraged in Q2 and may not necessarily be still looking at the way they were before. So this is also reflected in showings. So the showing time index, this is just a compilation of how many times lock boxes are open. And you can see here that it boomed in January, February, March, April, and then tapering off. So less showings than we've been having. Lock boxes opened less. So we shall see if this trend continues. But housing prices are still up. Again, May, year-over-year house appreciation. So these different indexes across the country look at different things, but generally speaking, everything from 15% from May 2021 compared with May of 2020 to 18%. So housing prices up anywhere from 15 to 18% across the country. For us, last month I reported, remember, 40% increase year over year. It's a little less, and I'll go over those figures for July, but for June, we were up 40%, both average prices and median price. So, I mean, Bend is still a very, very popular place for people to be. So given that sales activities are coming down, we may be sensing some turn in the market. We're seeing less prevalence of multiple offers. It's still a seller's market, but people need to be very cautious how they price their home to attract buyers, knowing that these sales activities are declining somewhat. This is true. When we have sellers who are like seller pricing, I mean, the broker comes in and says, I had this discussion yesterday with one of our brokers who has a client who wants, broker has said, this is what the market is showing. It is a sweet spot for your home. She said, we could probably push it up another 50,000. Seller wants to push it up 75,000. And I'm like, yeah, seller is seeing that maybe we could have gotten away with that 3 months ago. I don't think we can get away with it now. You know, and understand when you price per the market, there are still buyers out that would be attracted to a home priced at market. and there might be multiple of them who are interested, priced at market, who will bid the price up. So, but when you go up so high, you run the risk of no one looking at your home because it's overpriced. And so when that happens, you start having to do price reduction, and then people say, well, what's wrong with the house? And then they think, oh, you're doing a price reduction, you must be getting desperate, and so I'll bid lower. You know, so also one of the things I always say, when you have a seller who wants to price super high, I say, okay, let me take you to some comps of homes that are priced at that level that you want them to be priced at. Put on your hat as a buyer. Don't take into consideration you own this house that you're trying to sell. Now, here's this house that you happen to own, and here's this house, both priced the same. Which one would you buy as a buyer? This one that needs major remodeling, or this one that's ready to go right now? You know, so, or this one that has these amenities versus your home. So sometimes sellers, you know, they get very emotional and they get very, well, my house is better. Well, is it better? Show them other homes that it might be more what the buyers in this market are looking at. It's a tough time. You know, it's tough for sellers. I get that. They want to maximize the money out of their homes. I think that's wonderful, and they should get as much as possible. But if they're getting greedy, you know, they run the risk of missing the market altogether. So something to look at here too. This is the months of inventory of homes for sale. This again is a housing crash. When we had 12 months of inventory, such a strong buyer's market. And we have been in a seller's market since coming out of the housing bubble bursting, and extreme seller's market, but it's starting to tip upward. It's starting to tip upward. We're still in a seller's market, but it's going up. So at a broad level, home prices are in no danger of a decline due to tight inventory conditions, but we do expect prices to appreciate at a slower pace by the end of the year. Ideally, the cost for a home would rise roughly in line with income growth, which is likely to happen in 2022 as more listings and new construction become available. And again, that's from Lawrence Young, the chief economist at NAR. So prediction is home prices are going to keep on rising, but at a lesser rate. And hopefully by next year, we'll have more homes available as new construction hits more across the country. Interestingly enough, I'd shared a few months ago how much building prices had gone up, lumber prices have gone up. They've actually come down. So we're back at maybe more affordability as far as new home construction, just because of prices having adjusted. So let me get out of that and let me go here to what's actually happening in our market. So slideshow from beginning. So let's look at what's going on with our company from July 2021 versus July 2020. I always go over these things. And roughly the listings were about the same, but the volume of our listings from 10 million, almost double. So the value of our listings had gone up tremendously. We're listing much more higher end properties. The pending sales actually were down over last year. And that's interesting when you consider, I think in essence in July, we're starting to transition and people getting discouraged, not writing offers. But the value of our pending sales went from 36 million to 46 million. So much more value to them, so higher end stuff. Our closed is up 16% from 57 to 66. And then the volume of our closed, again, we're up $10 million over the year before. And our overall year-to-date figures, we had closed 318 versus 246 in 2020, pushing 193,000. Now, when we get to our figures that are reported at MLS, on the sales that we had of 318, we're on both sides of a number of those transactions and that's doubled in MLS. So I'll show you those figures as soon as we get to it. So we actually are, we've sold year to date 318 properties. We're on pace to have written well over 1,000. Again, multiple offers, you know, a lot of those things have to still be recorded. They didn't go anywhere, but we've done a lot of work. So this is the chart I always still use, which talks about what's going on within residential properties. And you can see that the listings, the number of listings, new listings have actually gone down a bit from June to July. Listing prices, median list price actually, this isn't accurate. The active list price actually went down. Active median list price, I don't get what that is. Active median list price, new list, oh, these are mediums, excuse me. But the absorption rate, look at that. Prices, the amount of inventory is going up. The sold to list ratio is going down. So we're still selling on average over 100%, but it's not like at 104%. Days in market are starting to creep up, and the price volume is kind of leveling off. So this is the chart I always use a lot of in my blogs, and I'm just, again, comparing what's going on with bin single-family residential homes. So still not enough inventory, 295 versus 687. New listings, 301, up a little bit over the year before. New pendings, again, up 45%, but solds down 25%. With our office, we were up on solds and down on pendings, so kind of a reversal of that. Sold volume, almost the same, but the average sales price is up to $801,000, $801,000, up 31%, and the median sales at 666, which is up 26%. Again, in June, both of those figures were up 40% over June from 2020. So still up, but not as high a ratio as before. And the percentage of sales price to list price is 103, not 104, not 105. Months of supply is starting to gain. Remember, we were down to 2 weeks supply? We're now at 1.2 months of supply. So a little bit better as far as having more homes available for people to look at. And I'm sure that's what you're seeing in the market as well. So moving on to slide 4, here's where Bend Premier is. So we're still firmly in number 6 position. And again, having doubled a number of those sales because we're on both sides of the transaction, we're at 202 million as far as the volume. You guys have questions about this? What you're seeing? All that?
What's the average days on market right now?
Average days in market was 1.2 months of supply. Oh, average, excuse me.
5.
Yeah, oh, days of market, excuse me. Days of market is, get out of here. I can pull that up here. Average days on market. We're having some internet connection issues. Let's try the median days on market. 5 median days on market. Average days on market are 9. And that's again for bin single family on less than an acre. I could pull up different areas. I could pull up Redmond, or I could pull up all of Deschutes County. These all things would change based upon that. But this, again, just looking at Bend itself. Months of supply. And again, we're at 1.2 months. So still the trend is downward, but compared with a year ago, but up from the month before. I like to see, I do this on a monthly basis. If you do it on a line, that kind of tells you a little bit more interestingly what's kind of going on here. So the line with each point noting what it was at that point instead of averaging them all together. Again, this internet is slow. I seem to have some issues here at this space. It's still finding it. As it finds it, any other thoughts about any of this? Here we go. So months supply still down. with each of these spots being a monthly, 1 month compared with the month before. But you can look at it as a rolling 12 too, in which 12 months are, it's averaged in there, and the chart and the line will be much smoother. So just kind of showing that down. So still have very little amount of inventory, but it's getting a little bit better than it was. Not that this chart shows it really well. The other thing here, if you look at what's going on with MLS, and I have a hot sheet here myself, which is showing what's going on with just Crook, Jefferson, and Deschutes County, and you can see price changes. We have 31 price changes in the last 24 hours. So people are, and most of these are price reductions. 34 new listings, closed 29, pending 34. So evening out, we're not having a massive bunch of new listings coming on with everything going pending.
Do you feel like you're seeing more back on the markets too?
Yeah.
One's falling out. It seems like
Yeah. Yeah, we're 7 back on markets in the last 24 hours. Yeah. Yeah, we're seeing that. In fact, even within our own office, we're seeing some times in which people, believe it or not, we've had a couple go back on markets. Buyers found at the very end they didn't qualify for the loan, you know, and so that's a financing issue. Or for whatever reason, someone gets into contract and then they change their mind, or something else hits the market and they have a legitimate out still they use. Sometimes they can't come to terms on repairs. Starting to see some people revoke based upon repairs. So a lot of interesting things. What are you guys seeing? How about you online, guys? Do you have something you can comment on? Anyone have anything here to talk about anymore? What's going on here? Again, I'm anticipating that we will be back wearing masks soon. I don't know what that is going to do. It's like a step back into COVID. Does that mean we're going to be back into looking at buying homes again? Because it's like when we went into the lockdown, we're not saying we're going to be locked down. I haven't heard any rumor about them not allowing people go to work, but it's back to wearing masks indoors and might require gatherings to have more distance again. Maybe office meetings will have to be canceled or go online again. I mean, I don't know. I haven't heard yet. Anybody else? Anyone have comments about things that they're seeing in the market? How about buyers getting discouraged?
Yeah.
Yes, and you're seeing buyers getting discouraged.
My two are.
Yeah.
I got 2 in that low end, that 4 to 6.
Mhm.
Even still in bed.
Well, I have one in Bend that's 550 from 5 to 6. And well, we just had some bad luck.
Yeah.
We had the seller back out. One deal I had him in, and the other deal was a manufactured on Butler, and it was on a foundation.
Yeah.
And it was listed in the MLS on a foundation. So that was just.
And it wasn't on the foundation.
No, and my buyers are engineers.
Yeah.
So they said no.
So for people who are not hearing online, Cinda was just volunteering that she has buyers who are looking in band 4 to 6 and had 2 sale fails with both of them. And it's not to say they didn't get a contract, but 2 sale fails.
Yeah.
And it's discouraging for
And it was
people.
hard enough to get them in the contract.
Yeah.
We wrote a lot of offers.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So that's after writing a lot of offers that were
But I think it's
declined.
right around the corner. I think.
Things are starting to shift, yeah. And for the good of buyers, obviously, the more inventory, the more opportunities for them to pick and choose. And we get back to a more balanced market where there's give and take. And the starting price on a home is not necessarily the asking price. You know, you can start a little bit lower and maybe get a bit of a deal. I mean, do you remember those days? You know, when we had asking price 500,000, people would come in at 480. Let's see if we can come to some reasonable figure between the two. It's an interesting change, especially when you consider when people are asking us, when are we going to get to the top? I think, will we get to the top? Are prices going to continue to rise? I think prices will keep on going unless we get a lot of new inventory hitting the market. That should start balancing things out. But the rate of the homes rising will decline. It won't be anywhere near as drastic. I mean, even comparing June to July, instead of 40% increase, we're down to 20, 23, 25%. So better rate for buyers looking for property. And again, if you still delay buying, waiting for it to start going down, you may never tap in. And we've talked about that before, the importance of buying where you are right now, if you want to start building equity in your home. Yeah. Comments of anybody else here?
So do you think that possibly people, like even on floor time, I'm sensing this, maybe I'm wishful thinking, but I'm thinking that people are over that waiting for it
Yeah.
to drop. I think now they're gonna start buying just because, okay, they see that it's not gonna happen, let's just go ahead and pull the trigger.
Yeah, Cinda was saying that she's thinking that what she's seeing while she's on floor is that people are no longer waiting. They're not waiting for that thing to go down. They're just looking to
They're
buy.
not talking like that.
They're not talking like that. Okay, that's good. That's good because I see the same thing. I see people who are working with buyers. They're just trying to find a house that works for them. Yeah. I'm still seeing certain properties hit the market. They may, instead of being snapped up in 2 or 3 days, they may be on the market for a couple of weeks before they get into contract. And that's good. But, you know, ironically, this last weekend, we had several of our listings that had maybe been on the market for a couple of weeks get into contract, but multiple offers. So again, 2 offers. I'm not saying 5, but it just took the right time for those people to find the home and to write. And then it's nice for our seller to have a variety of options to choose from. Anything else, anybody here? Any other comments you guys want to give or anything else? Okay, if not, this is what I had for today. So next week, however, I have Jack Zika, who is a Ben Premier broker and also a state legislator. He's going to be doing a continuing education class for us all. And I don't know if it's going to be here in this space or if we're going to have to do it all virtually. It's a lot going to be dependent upon what the governor's orders are. But it will be on what's happened at the state legislature this last session as far as real estate and how new laws that have been passed will be impacting us and how we have to be aware of what's going on there. And I know there's a number of things, questions I have for him. For instance, the ADU issue on rural property. What is the status of that? I know it was passed. So where are we on getting that implemented for people who have rural property and want to be building ADUs out there? Yeah.
On that note, I was at the MLS meeting yesterday.
Oh, thanks.
And they had a city planner come in and he was talking about stuff, but it does sound like they, COAR said they thought at the very beginning, early September, they're going to be having a class on the ADU and Deschutes County and all of that I thought would be.
Oh,
So anybody who's interested in that, because I like to do Anchorage. So
yeah.
They said September 4th.
Wonderful, wonderful.
They thought they would be having a class.
Thank you, Angeli. For those online, basically, Angeli volunteered that they had a planner from the city of Bend at the MLS meeting yesterday, and they believe there's going to be a class on rural ADUs come September 4th.
Yeah, and that's COAR who's putting it on.
Core.
Does government affairs.
Yeah. That would be great. That's Tyler. Yeah.
Yes.
Tyler with Government Affairs. Yeah, that's great. Still be aware that we are still scheduled to have a hybrid version of the OAR convention in September. Haven't heard if that's still supposed to be in Sun River. So you can do it all virtually or you can do it in person or a combination thereof. One of the breakout sessions the last day will be done virtually, and that will be on new construction. And yeah, I see this all the time. We get into contract on new construction in which the seller is not a licensed contractor, and it's happening all the time. People just don't know what's going on with it, and it's as you know, I've talked with plenty of people about it. It's illegal, and how do we protect our buyers in situations like this? And I think most times people are just ignorant. They just don't know what they're doing is illegal because they have a licensed contractor building the home. So just to be aware of that. There's going to be a lot of good things. They have some good speakers coming out there. Even Brian Flaherty, who is a guy who talks about security and how to be aware, how to protect yourself. I always worry about people who are doing open houses. Be aware of your surroundings. Always plan for an out. Never get between yourself. Never let a person who comes to your open house get between you and the door. Show them and follow them into the room, but stay between them and the door so you can always run out if necessary. Things like that. It's real helpful stuff. And he's a very interesting character. Plus, obviously things on inspiration and what's happening with trends across the country. Even with, what was happening nationally with NAR as far as how it impacts us with our business models. And it's all good stuff just to be aware of what's happening. Anything else for anybody?
I'm going to be taking a new listing next week.
Oh, good. Yes, please have some odds. Angeli's sharing with us a new listing.
So I'm going to be, hopefully we're going live toward the end of next week. It's a townhouse in Rivers Edge Village. 1918 square feet, 2-car garage, built 1991. I'm going to see tomorrow how updated it is. But I think they've done some updating in the kitchen and stuff like that. And so there's been several that have gone for sale in there, and they've gone pending quite quickly. And it backs to the golf course.
So,
well, I think it's the golf course that's not being
removed.
But still,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so for those online, Angelique's got a new Rivers Edge townhome listing coming up next week, probably into next week. It's one of the older ones that backs the golf course, built to 1991. 1918 square feet. So, and hopefully it is the golf course that's not going to be developed.
Yeah.
So we'll find out more information.
Around $675.
Like $675 for it. So that's good. That's a good price point. Absolutely.
I had a manufactured home on land in La Pine later in September. It's 1,800 square feet, 3-bedroom, 2-bath. He's done a ton of work, new windows, new flooring. It's on an acre. They'll be in the mid-3s.
Mid-3s, perfect. Excellent.
It has a barn and it does have a shop.
Barn and shop.
And garage.
Yeah. And for those who weren't able to get to Angelique's listing yesterday that was on MLS Tour, I was just amazed at that property. It was, I'm just shocked that someone hasn't grabbed it because it's 20 acres that backs to National Forest. And it's a special setting, private, big house, and a separate shop. And, 4 acres of irrigation is just, and they have it irrigated in grass. It's just a pastoral setting with.
There's actually several acres down by the shop too, so you
Oh.
actually could fence that in down by the shop.
Okay.
There's
So-
several acres down there too. That's all in-ground irrigation.
So lots of wonderful things with that house. And we were just talking about how 20 acres just down the street sold for $800,000 and undeveloped, totally undeveloped, $800,000 for 20 acres. And so her land developed with irrigation rights, have to be worth more than $800,000. And what about a house and a shop on top of it? And they've had a price reduction to $1,650,000. I'm just blown away that people just haven't grabbed that property. I mean, the house is it's well built. It's definitely well built and well cared for. It is not the modern look that a lot of people are looking for. It's a house built in the 90s, but it's got so much going for it. The space is phenomenal and solid home. And unlike most homes in the 90s, they don't have carpet. They have hardwood floors or travertine most places. So it's wonderful. It's a great house. So I'm hoping that someone will jump in on that sometime soon. Okay, if nothing else, guys, that's it for today. And I will send out an email to everybody as soon as we get updates from the governor as to what we are and are not allowed to do for next week. So I hope everyone at least puts it on their calendar to attend for CE credit and learn from Jack what's going on with the law. Thanks so much, everybody.